The towel was warm. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the wet shower tiles, not the smell of my own shampoo in the hallway, not even the indent pressed into the left side of my pillow. The towel. My towel, warm and damp, and hanging perfectly straight on the hook behind my bathroom door. At 10:47 in the morning on a Wednesday, when I had not showered since the night before, I stood there with my bag still on my shoulder and my keys still in my hand, and I didn't move. My brain kept offering explanations, and I kept shutting everyone down. Maybe you forgot. No, I hadn't. Maybe you used it this morning. No. I'd left in a rush, dry hair, granola bar in hand, out the door by 7:40. Nothing was stolen. Laptop on the counter. Rings in the dish. Whoever had been in my apartment hadn't taken a thing, they had only showered. Dried off with my towel, and left before I got home. My name is Mara Stellan. I'm 28, an occupational therapist at a rehab clinic in Columbus, Ohio, and I need you to stay with me because what happened took weeks to unravel, and even now it makes my chest go tight. If you're new here, please subscribe. 2 seconds, that's all, and every subscriber genuinely means something to me. Okay, back to the towel. I live alone. 2 years in Unit 402, 4th floor, corner unit, window facing the parking lot, and a strip of trees that turns gold every October. I moved in after a long relationship ended and needed a space that was completely mine. I fold my throw blanket the same direction every time. Coffee mug's face handle-left. I notice when things shift, because I have built my life around noticing. So, how had I missed this? I sat on the edge of my bed and saw the pillow. Left side. I always sleep on the right. There was a faint indent, and that wrinkle pattern that only comes from someone lying there a while. I had made my bed that morning. That pillow was smooth when I left. I called Jovi, my coworker, because my brother Philip didn't pick up. She answered first ring. When I told her what I was looking at, she went quiet, then said, "Mara, are you sure?" I said, "I'm sure about the towel. I'm sure about the pillow." She said, "Okay, who has a key to your unit?" That stopped me cold. Nobody. I had never given a spare to anyone. I kept both keys myself, one on my main ring, one in the small ceramic leaf dish my mom gave me before she passed. I checked both while Jovi was still on the line. "Both keys are right here," I said. "Then how did someone get inside?" No answer. And that question would sit in my stomach like a cold stone for 11 days. But first, the hairs. Since January, I had been finding long, dark hairs everywhere. I have short auburn hair. These were different. Straight, deep brown, much longer. Bathroom floor, shower drain, once caught on the inside of my closet door. I explained it away every time. I take the bus. I work with people. Hairs travel. I told myself that, and kept moving. I had been finding evidence for months, and taught myself to look straight through it. I went down to Greta, the building manager. Mid-60s, sharp, not easily rattled. I showed her my photos. The towel, the pillow, the shower ceiling still faintly steamed. She checked the key log. No building access. No maintenance calls. Nothing since move-in. She pulled the hallway camera. Motion triggered. Fired once at 9:22 that morning. A girl walking away from my door toward the stairwell. I recognized her immediately. Second floor, Unit 207. Young, quiet, earbuds always in. Her father Harlan had introduced himself once in the lobby. Kind man. Said his daughter was studying at the community college. 9:22. Already leaving, which meant she had been inside well before the camera caught her. And it had only caught her once. Out of however many mornings she had actually walked through my door. How many times? How many mornings? When I finally found out, the number was worse than anything I had allowed myself to imagine. I found out how she got in on a Thursday morning, 11 days after I stood in my bathroom staring at that warm towel. But before I get to that, The 2 days after I saw her on the camera footage were the longest I can remember. I kept waking up at 3, 4 in the morning, staring at my front door like it might just open on its own. I had already changed the locks the morning after I saw the footage. New deadbolt, new handle lock, different brand for each. The locksmith finished by noon, and I stood there watching him work and thinking about how my original locks had somehow already been defeated by a 20-year-old girl with earbuds in. I didn't go knock on her door. Jovi told me not to. My brother Philip, when he finally called back, said the same. "You don't know what you're walking into," he said. I thought that was dramatic. I didn't think so by the end of the week. What I did do was check my Wi-Fi. I was lying in bed on a Thursday night, laptop open, not really working, and I went into my router settings just to look at something unrelated. And there it was, under connected devices. A phone I didn't recognize. And a laptop I didn't recognize. The phone showed a last seen timestamp of 9:18 that morning, 4 minutes before the hallway camera caught her leaving my floor. She had been sitting in my apartment, on my Wi-Fi, at 9:18 in the morning. I took a screenshot and sat very still for about 30 seconds. Then I scrolled up and saw that both devices had been connecting to my network since the second week of January. Sometimes daily. Sometimes every other day. Always between 7 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. Always gone before I got home. January. Exactly when I had found the first hair. I called Philip that same night, told him what I found. He went quiet, then said, "Mara, she's been working from your apartment." I said, "I know," he said. "For how long?" I said, 5 months. 5 months. I sat with that number and couldn't make it feel real. I went to the police the next morning, filed a report. The officer I spoke to, Detective Aldridge, took notes without flinching and asked calm, direct questions. Had I given the girl permission? No. Anything stolen? Not that I could confirm. Did I have documentation? Camera footage? Wi-Fi logs? Photos? Yes, to all 3. She said this qualified as criminal trespasses, regardless of theft, and that she'd follow up within 48 hours. She came back in 36. Detective Aldridge had gone down to Unit 207 with a partner. Both parents were home, and the girl, her name was Petra, I learned that for the first time, confessed within minutes. Didn't argue, didn't deny. Just started crying and kept saying she was sorry. Detective Aldridge came up afterward and gave me the breakdown. And here is how she got in. Petra had called a locksmith, the same one her family used when they first moved in 3 years ago. She told him she was locked out of her unit. He came, she met him at my door on the 4th floor instead of her family's door on the 2nd, and he opened it without checking which floor he was on, made her copies of both keys, charged her $60 and left. $60. That's what it cost her to walk in and out of my home for 5 months. I remember Detective Aldridge telling me that. And I remember the feeling that moved through me. Not rage exactly, something quieter and colder, the kind that sits behind your eyes and doesn't move. But then Detective Aldridge said, "There's one more thing," and paused slightly before saying it. And that pause told me before the words did that whatever was coming was worse than everything I'd already heard. She said Petra hadn't just been using my apartment to study. She said when Detective Aldridge asked how many times Petra had been inside my unit across the full 5 months, Petra had looked at the floor and said she had lost count. Lost count. I sat with that for the rest of the day and still couldn't find the bottom of it. The part that almost made me feel sorry for her came out slowly. Over the next few days, Harlan knocked on my door on a Saturday morning. I almost didn't open it. I stood on my side of the door for a long moment before I finally did. He was holding his hat in both hands the way older men do, when they're genuinely ashamed and don't know where to put themselves. He apologized before I could say a single word, not a quick sorry, a real one. Long and halting and painful to listen to. He told me Petra had never done anything like this before in her life. She was quiet, kept to herself, had maybe 3 friends total. After the lockdowns when she was 18, she had just retreated. stopped being comfortable in shared spaces. Their apartment had gotten louder over time. 2 younger step-siblings, his wife tutoring students from home 3 days a week. Petra had nowhere in that apartment that was quiet and fully hers. She should have asked, he said. She should have gone to the library, he kept saying should have over and over, like he was building a wall out of it. I stood in my doorway and listened and didn't say much, because part of me did understand it. I had needed a space of my own badly enough to sign a lease alone at 26. I knew what it felt like to need quiet the way other people need water. I understood the impulse, even while the violation of it made my skin feel wrong. But understanding something is not the same as excusing it. Harlan offered to pay for the new locks, the hallway camera, any food that had gone missing. I told him no to all of it. He said Petra wanted to apologize in person when she was ready. I said okay. He left. I called Jovi that afternoon and told her everything. She said, "So are you going to let it go?" I said I think so, she confessed. Locks are changed, it's over. Jovi said, okay, in that voice she uses when she doesn't actually think it's okay but chooses not to push. I should have asked her what she meant. I didn't. For about 4 days, I genuinely believed it was done. Slept better, stopped waking at 3 in the morning, staring at the door, went back to my routine. Clinic by 8, home by 5:30, throw blanket folded the right direction, coffee mug handle left. I told myself the story was finished and started to feel the tension leave my shoulders for the first time in weeks. Then Philip called on a Wednesday afternoon. "Did you know the locksmith is talking about this online?" I said, "What do you mean talking about it?" He posted on the neighborhood forum. Getting ahead of it in case anyone files a complaint. Mara. He used the building's name. I pulled it up while Philip was still on the line. 3 paragraphs. The locksmith explaining he had been deceived by a young woman who gave him the wrong floor, that he had acted in good faith, that he felt terrible. He hadn't used Petra's name or mine. But he used the building name, the street, enough detail that anyone who lived here would recognize exactly which units were involved. 22 comments, half of them sympathetic to him. One said, "Wait, so someone was basically living in their neighbor's apartment for months and nobody noticed?" I read that 3 times, because this was now a story other people were telling. About my building. About my floor. About me. Without my name, but with enough geography that it didn't matter. I closed the laptop. Sat still. Then my phone buzzed. Unsaved number. "I'm sorry, I know that's not enough. I'm just sorry. Petra." I stared at that message a long time. Almost typed something kind back. Had my thumbs on the keyboard. Something like, "I know," or, "Thank you for that." Something that closed the door gently. I didn't send it. A small, uncomfortable feeling stopped me. One I couldn't name yet. I went back to the forum. Read the comments again more carefully, and noticed something I had missed the first time. One comment near the bottom, posted an hour after the locksmith's original message. No profile photo. No post history. Nothing. It said, "Honestly, the apartment looked empty half the time anyway." I read that twice. That comment could only have been written by someone who had actually been there. I showed Detective Aldridge the comment the next morning. She looked at it on my phone screen and asked me to forward the link. She said, "Noted," and "We'll look into it," but the way she said it told me she was taking it seriously. I walked out of the station feeling steadier than I had in days, like I had handed something heavy to someone whose job it was to carry it. That feeling lasted about 6 hours. I got home from the clinic that evening and found a note slipped under my door. Folded once, no envelope. My name written on the outside in handwriting I didn't recognize. I stood in my hallway with my coat still on and read it standing there. It was from Petra, not an apology. Not exactly. More like an explanation. Handwritten, 2 pages front and back. The kind of thing someone writes at 2 in the morning when they've run out of ways to sit with themselves. She wrote about feeling invisible at home. About how my apartment had felt like the first space in years where she could actually breathe. She wrote that she knew it was wrong. Used that phrase twice. But then she kept writing, kept explaining, and somewhere in the middle of the second page, The explanation started to feel less like remorse and more like justification. She wrote, "You were never there. I never took anything. I just needed somewhere to exist for a few hours." I read that line 4 times. You were never there. Like my absence was a kind of permission. Like the hours between my leaving in the morning and coming home at night were an opening she had every right to step into. Like my apartment was only truly mine when I was physically standing inside it. I folded the note and put it on the counter next to the ceramic leaf dish, the one with my spare key still in it. I looked at both of them and thought about the fact that Petra had stood in this kitchen, had opened my cabinets, had eaten my food, had laid in my bed and used my towel, and connected her laptop to my Wi-Fi, and done all of it for 5 months, just 1 floor above her own family, who had no idea. I called Philip, read him the note over the phone. He was quiet all the way through, then said, "Mara, she posted that comment. She's not sorry, she's managing you." I had already thought it. Hearing him say it out loud made it land differently. I went back to the forum that night. The comment was still there. Posted 1 hour after the locksmith's message, which meant she had seen his post almost immediately, which meant she was watching how this story was being told publicly and had decided to quietly shape it. She was telling people my home looked empty, like it was unclaimed, like what she had done was somehow understandable given the circumstances. I sat with that for a long time. Then I did something I almost never do. I went through my apartment very carefully. Not cleaning, just looking. Low and methodical. The way I observe a patient when something feels slightly off and I can't name it yet. Room by room, starting at the front door. I found it in the back of my bedroom closet, on the high shelf behind a box of winter things I hadn't touched since March. A small, spiral notebook. Pale green, the cheap kind, not mine. I brought it down and opened it. Class notes on the left pages. On the right pages, in smaller handwriting, something else entirely. A log. Dates and times going all the way back to January. In at 7:40, left at 3:55. She got home at 5:48. Over and over. My schedule, my patterns, how long I stayed at the clinic, when I came home early, when I ran late. She had been tracking me. Not loosely, carefully, with enough consistency to predict my movements within a 20-minute window. The warm towel. The indent in the pillow. The hairs I had trained myself not to see. She hadn't been gambling on my schedule. She had been studying it for months before she ever stepped inside, and she had kept tracking me the entire time she was coming and going. I closed the notebook, set it on the counter next to the leaf dish and the folded note, and I understood then that what I had believed was over was not even close to finished. I brought the notebook to Detective Aldridge the next morning. I placed it on her desk without saying anything first and watched her open it. She read 2 pages and then looked up at me. "She kept a written log of your schedule." Not a question. "Going back to January." I said yes. She closed it carefully and said, "This changes things." It changed them in 2 ways. First, it elevated the case from simple trespass to something worth pursuing seriously. Premeditation made the difference between a warning and real documentation with real consequences. Second, the forum comment was no longer just uncomfortable. Someone who tracked another person's daily movements in a handwritten log and then posted anonymously to soften public perception of what she had done. That was intentional. That was a pattern. Detective Aldridge contacted the forum and subpoenaed the account's IP address. It matched Petra's home network. By Friday, Petra's family had been formally notified the case was escalating. Harlan called me that afternoon. No excuses this time. Just, "I'm sorry," and "Whatever you decide, I understand." His voice was different from the Saturday he had stood at my door with his hat in his hands. Smaller somehow. I filed for a formal restraining order keeping Petra off my floor and from contacting me in any form. Detective Aldridge helped with the paperwork. It went through in under a week. The forum post stayed up. The locksmith's paragraphs, the 22 comments, Petra's anonymous edition buried at the bottom. I had screenshots of everything. I sat with it for several days. Philip said, report it and make it disappear. Jovi said the opposite. Mara, you have the notebook, the Wi-Fi logs, the footage, the restraining order. You don't have to be quiet about any of this. I thought about the comment. Honestly, the apartment looked empty half the time anyway. I thought about her note. You were never there. I thought about standing in my bathroom on a Wednesday morning with my bag still on my shoulder and my keys still in my hand, staring at a warm towel and not being able to explain it. And I thought about the first hair I found in January. Long, dark, straight. Caught on the inside of my closet door. How I had looked right at it and told myself it meant nothing. I wrote a response on the forum. Not long, not angry, just clear. I said I was the resident whose unit had been entered without permission for 5 months. I said it had been reported to police, a formal case had been filed, and a restraining order was now in place. I said the person responsible had kept a written log of my daily schedule to time her entries and exits. I said I was sharing this because the original post had framed the locksmith as the only victim, and that framing left out most of the story. 41 responses in the first hour. Then 60. Then the post spread to 2 other local forums. The kind of reaction that happens when something feels both impossible and completely believable at the same time. Petra's anonymous comment disappeared that night. The account was deleted. I don't know what her life looks like now. I don't know if she got help or moved or is sitting in someone else's apartment right now while they're at work, not yet knowing. The restraining order keeps her off my floor. The new locks keep her out. The hallway camera is still there. I check my Wi-Fi devices every Sunday. It takes 45 seconds. I don't think I'll ever fully stop. But here's what I know. I walked into my bathroom on a Wednesday morning, and something in me knew before my brain caught up, before I had any evidence, before I could explain it to anyone, that something was wrong. I had been trained my whole life to find the reasonable answer, to not make things into more than they needed to be. I am done explaining things away. If this sat in your chest, share it. Leave a comment. I read every one. Like this video if you made it to the end, and subscribe if you want to hear more. You being here means more to me than I know how to say. That warm towel. I still think about it.